we're back in the studio again with Jason and Jim. So the three JAs to continue our what's wrong?
No, I had like some weird lighting thing going on.
Oh, okay. I was like about to say like, is the static back? Um,
Oh, I
so,
see that.
You
Yeah,
see
I see
that?
that now. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like when you go backwards.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go ahead, Jim.
that's fine. Um, so we're back for another optimization and A/B testing focused episode with Jason Boal. So Jason, thanks for deciding to brave another episode with us.
Yeah, I'm just glad you keep inviting me back. Hopefully that's a good thing.
Yeah. The first two episodes have gone really well, and the first two being the first one being, whoa, I'm losing my balance here. I'm gonna have to do some editing and clean this all up.
No, no. This is real. This is it, man. This is how we started out the podcast. Is we were so sick of the scripted, polished. Like, let's just do a podcast where it's real.
Yeah,
So
and I'm fighting a headache this morning, so it's
it's
just
the smoke, man.
yeah, I'm just fighting a headache that won't quit.
I
So
opted out of I opted out of a run this morning outside for that reason, and I don't like to take days off, but like I was like, oh, I might want to listen to
yeah,
this weather warning because I mean in Pittsburgh I don't think it's as bad as you're seeing in Philadelphia or New York, which is it's really bad there, but here it's you can tell a little bit. You can
yeah.
definitely tell.
I mean, it smells like a campfire outside. Like you definitely go. Like last night, it was really heavy, and I've taken my workout equipment out to the patio, so I've been working out on the patio. With the nice weather, and even today I went out. I'm like, "Yep, nope, not today," and turned right back around because you could just tell, like, yeah, I'm like you, I'm gonna take this one a bit seriously, and didn't do it. But still, like, we got the air conditioner running, and yeah, I just woke up with a headache, and it just won't go away.
Sorry, I'm still chuckling at the shining lights
Yeah,
at
I'm so,
Jason's place.
it's super
It's almost
distracting.
like it's possessed. There's some you got some
Oh,
possession. Like it's evil spirits over there or something.
I think I need to upgrade my webcam or something. I don't know. All right, sorry, Jim. Man,
We're
we
we're already off the
we're off.
rails today. We're only
We don't
3 minutes in.
even know where this is gonna go now.
So like where I was starting to intro before I almost fell over. The first episode in this series, we were talking about like what to do when standing up an optimization program. Last week we talked about what not to do as part of whether it's standing up a program or even just continuing to maintain an existing program. What you shouldn't do. Today I want to get a bit hyper focused. And bring in analytics to part of the conversation. One of the things we've noticed with many organizations is that they separate out their analytics and optimization programs. So they're in either two completely different organizations, two completely different and unrelated teams, but they're split out. So what I want to talk about today is why shouldn't you do that? Why should you make sure that both of these programs are integrated?
Yeah, that sounds good, Jim, and I agree with you. I will say, hopefully, we can touch upon tools as well later on. I'm a big process person, as we talked about last time, but we think about the people and the organizations are separated, but also we have tools, right? We have a tool for analytics and we have a tool for testing. So I want to talk about, a little bit later on, like let's talk about why that's important too, to have those two integrated. Um, and it might go hand in hand at times, but for sure, having your analytics team either directly involved with your optimization team or it's some sort of matrix reporting or just so there's no silos, it's critical. It's really critical from a bunch of standpoints. So this is a great topic to get into for sure.
So where do you start that? Do you want to start it from a tools perspective, or do you want to start it from a organizational structure perspective?
Let's start from an organizational structure perspective because I think that's we want to make sure that's right up front. Um, and so if from my experience, and I've worked with both on the client side, but also with clients who have had some really nice setups with their analytics groups, and then some organizations where analytics really wasn't involved until the very back end of the process. And so an example there is, I'm running an optimization team, and I do everything, from the process, test ideation, QA, we get it launched on the site live, boom, and then we end it. And then, I go off and ask an analytics group to help me with the results, and they know nothing about the test, right? Or maybe they know that there's a test on the site, but they don't know very much about it. So a lot of things can happen there that aren't good. So an example would be, we launch a test, we put a lot of work into getting it live on the site. We think we're going to see some good results, and then we get to the back end, the test is done, and now we find out, oh, we can't even measure what we want to measure. That's worst case, and that's happened before. Maybe it's like, hey, we didn't really want to look at all the visitors that came into the A/B test. We wanted to look at a certain subset, and we're like, oh, we can't do that. We don't have the ability to do that. And then you'll hear, oh, I wish I would have known this before the test launched. We could have set something up. So that's kind of a worst case example where because there's so much time and resources are put in getting these tests live on the site, time from developers, from design, from content, and then you get there and you're like, oh, we can't get the data. We can't get the data we want, and or the data is going to come, but it's not giving us everything we want. So from the standpoint of tying the two together, analytics and optimization, it's super important. And that's kind of like the back end. That's a worst case scenario, back end results.
Why do organizations end up with this type of a structure? Is it deliberate, and that they're doing it by design, and that they think that it's best for these programs to exist in different parts of the business, or is it happening more organically where we don't even know where they're supposed to sit, and for whatever reason one ends up in one part of the business and one ends up in the other?
Yeah, I certainly think it's the latter, and it's more of a case of you don't know what you don't know, right? So whether it's the optimization team or the analytics team, they may not be aware of like the power that bringing these two groups together actually has, and not only that, but the potential impact that it could have. So I talked about real quickly like a results part of it, but there's also this whole thing called test ideation, and you need a strong test ideation piece of the process to have a best in class optimization program. You need these test ideas coming in at a you need high quality test ideas coming in at a consistent rate. And so they may not even be aware of what's the downside to separating analytics and optimization from our test ideation standpoint too. So there's kind of dangers on both sides of the process here.
So I think that's a really good point. So let's talk about that a little bit, because I think it's a very real challenge that organizations face and don't have the guidance on how to address it. Because let's kind of drill into that point you made of, we don't know what we don't know until we get into it, and then it's too late. Right, like we've made the decision, we've hired people, we've created this structure, and we're like, oh, it would have been so much better had we put these together. But now we have all this political overhead, and how do we now change? And so we don't. And even though we know it's not the right approach, we stick with it because we don't want to have to rock the boat. What advice do you have for organizations on how to deal with that?
Yeah, I mean, the first piece of advice I would have is I mean, this is going to sound not trite, but like figure out a way to get it done. Like have a sit down. Have a sit down with your if you're the director of the optimization team, have a sit down with your analytics partner. I mean, everybody's busy, right? And everyone has time constraints, and but have a sit down and there's a lot of value that an analytics team can bring to the table. So from a positioning standpoint of, hey, let's chat about this and figure out, does it make sense for our teams to work a little closer together. I think if you do it the right way and position it the right way, your peer in analytics will be like, oh, like, wow, I didn't know we could add value over here to the organization. We're over here burning and churning reports out. We can barely keep our heads, above water. But then they're like, oh wow, like I don't even know if these daily reports that we're turning out are adding value. But now I see what we can do over here, and it's almost like that's like the we didn't know, like maybe maybe the analytics teams think they're going to do the exact same thing they're doing now, which is just churn reports out of the back of A/B tests. But it's much more than that.
Yeah. Let's take a slightly different scenario, but similar tone in the conversation. A common trend that I've seen is that optimization, marketing tends to be a very lucrative entry point for SaaS vendors to attack. And there's no difference with optimization. SaaS optimization platforms have really perfected their pitch to marketing organizations. They go in there with their WYSIWYG. They say, have you ever wanted to change this button color from orange to blue? Have you ever wanted to change a headline and your team just tells, we don't have the time to do it? Well, now you can do it. And so they buy this tool, they do their, cosmetic testing, and then they quickly hit the ceiling and realize this isn't something we can manage. Let's throw it over the fence to the analytics team and say, we need your help maintaining and running this for us. But now the analytics team is like, we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the budget, we don't have the expertise. What advice do you have in that scenario?
Yeah, so I think it was the last week or the week before, we talked a lot about process, and I mean, really, what it comes down to is, I'm writing a piece right now, a content article around like what does the term optimization even mean? Like what you hear about, oh, I run an optimization team, or let's optimize the site, but what does that really mean, right? So I was breaking down the definition. I just came across something really interesting, which is like, you're trying to make something perfect, but you're trying to make it more functional. You're trying to make it more usable. You're trying to make it better. And you can't do that without knowing what's wrong, right? So like I'm in charge of, I'm going to go optimize my product detail page, right? I'm gonna make it a little bit better. I'm gonna make it more user friendly. I'm gonna drive conversions. But in order to optimize something, like, I need to know like what's the purpose of it? Like, what's the purpose of my product detail page? But not only that, like what's the data behind it? Like, what types of people are coming to the page? What are they doing? What are some trends I'm seeing? Can I break down those audiences even further from a personalization standpoint? So, like, just from a big picture optimization process, like, there's just so much that can be done there. And
Yeah.
that's just one example, like taking a page on the site. But yeah.
So let's talk about, I guess, some of the lost opportunities or maybe risks of having these separated. Because one of the things that I've found as I've talked to organizations where these sit in different departments is we'll go talk to the team that owns optimization that sits outside of analytics, and they'll say, well, we don't understand why this is a problem. We have analytics in our optimization platform. Why do we need more or different analytics? That won't that just add to the confusion of what we're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, because in these testing tools, yeah, you got the WYSIWYG, you have a report, some sort of reporting UI, but in most cases, and this isn't necessarily a slam on the vendors, but in most cases, those UIs, they're limited in functionality. They're limited in what types of metrics and dimensions and segments and audiences you can bring in, but they're definitely limited in how creative you can get in building a solution of results. And where this is like super important is, again, I'm going to go back to, like, we spend so much time, effort, and energy in getting tests and optimization programs up and running, and keeping the momentum going. Um, but most tests don't produce a significant winner. So, I think it's 20-25% industry average is a test winner actually, happen on this, in an optimization program. So what do we do with the other 75% of those tests, right? And if analytics and optimization isn't integrated, I would say in the majority of cases, those 75% of tests are throwaways. Meaning, you know, hey, we took a quick look at the results, and the test variant for the product detail page, it did not reach significance, from a conversion rate standpoint. So that's it. That's all we got. But there's so much more in that other part of these tests that aren't winners, the 75%. And the only way to get in there is to really look at the data, look at the analytics, look at the audiences, look at the behavior. And the lost opportunity cost is we could iterate on tests that we don't know that we could even iterate on. Like, don't throw the test out. Maybe there's a certain subset in that group that actually showed some promising behavior, and we want to tweak it for them, right? But the only way we're going to do that is really get into the analytics really deep on some of these tests.
Let's kind of maybe start moving towards that part of the discussion, because I think one of the very real impacts that I've seen that often goes untalked about when we're talking about this scenario is the impact on the analytics data. We're looking at it from an optimization lens, but what about the analytics lens? So I'll give you an example, and this has happened at multiple companies that I have worked with. We've been doing an analysis. There's been a drastic change in the data. We're like banging our head against the wall. It's like, we don't understand what's happening here, and hours of trying to slice and dice the data. And then there's a hallway conversation like, oh, the optimization team's been running some really aggressive tests that have fundamentally changed the behavior of users on the site. It's not reflected in the data. So that's from a tool perspective. From an organizational perspective, there's no communication between the teams. So there's no alerting the analytics team that, hey, we're running these type of tests. It may impact your data. How do we, if these are separate organizations, how do we solve for that? And again, I think it's probably it's a tool component, and it's an organizational component.
That's a really valid point. And this might even be broader than just analytics, right? So my optimization program is running somewhat of in a silo, and all of a sudden I get an email from a vice president company that says, oh, like, what happened to the homepage?
And that's happened, like, huh? Right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Like, what happened to the homepage? Where'd my promotion go? This thing was, and you find out, oh yeah, again, like, oh, we're running an optimization test, and that's like, you got to nip that in the bud quickly, because that's where you get into situations like, all right, turn the testing tool off. We can't have this. We can't have this happening. That's a really like extreme example, but it does happen, to your point, Jason. Like,
it happens, and I've been guilty of that. So client side, I had optimization and analytics integrated, but I failed to, from an organizational perspective, be really transparent in communicating what was happening. I remember running one test on our subscription funnel, and the security team freaked out thinking our site had been hacked, and there was like all this effort going on, and I'm like, no, we were running a test, but how much money do we lose? How much, like, and it could have been solved.
Yeah.
Sorry to cut you off, but it happens.
No, hey, it happened to me too, probably more than once. I mean, I might be blacking a couple of the instances out, but it's definitely happened to me as well. And you learn from those mistakes, right? And you try to make the program better. But from a communication standpoint, like, a best in class optimization program has those pieces of the process in place from a communication standpoint. They're meeting on a monthly basis with the senior executives. And we're meeting with the vice president. We got product merchandise in the meeting. We got the e-commerce. We got the analytics. We've got the finance. We've got all these people, and at a high level, we're just saying, hey, these are the tests we're running on the site right now, just so you know. Better yet, these are the tests we'll be running in the next couple of weeks upcoming, just so you know. that's when you want those conversations like, oh crap, we can't run the test on the homepage during this time because we have a BOGO sale on this product, so we can't do that. So again, like it's about process and getting those conversations done up front. Yeah, for sure, it's happening. Yeah, still see it happening for sure.
Yeah. So I want to continue to kind of drill into that, and maybe whether it's process or tools or both, kind of talk through. And again, I want to look at it from an analytics lens,
Hmm.
because over the last 20 years of advising companies that are running optimization and analytics programs, I would say less than 5% of the companies I've worked with had a process in place for either accounting for or at least putting some sort of asterisk on reporting and analysis that specific optimization efforts may be impacting these numbers. And I appreciate the challenge, right? Because we're always testing, we're always running campaigns, and as businesses prioritize uh, velocity or number of tests, then it makes it even harder. And so
Hmm.
oftentimes either organizations A are unaware of it and don't account for it, or B say it's just too complicated. We'll just push out our reports, push out our analysis, and just ignore that we're running optimization. Is there a healthy somewhere in the middle we can meet? Because in my mind, it's like, wait a minute, optimization is could have the drastic impact on the numbers we're reporting. It doesn't feel healthy to me to just say, we'll just ignore that that's happening.
Yeah, yeah. There is a happy place to meet, and and let's dive into the tools real quick because when the tools are integrated, whether it's GA4 and a testing tool or Adobe Analytics and Target using what's called A4T Analytics for Target, getting those integrated. Um, it's really easy, simple to pull in. These are the tests I'm running on the site now into my analytics platform. These are the tests I'm running on the site now. Here's how visits are impacted. Here's how conversion rates are being impacted by this test. Here's how product views are being impacted. Here's how subscriptions are being. So that's when you have that tool integration in place. Yeah, it's really simple to sit down with your analytics team and say, okay, here are the tests we have in place. How do you want to, do you want to account for this in your weekly report? How do you want to do it? But it's real simple to get the data when the tools are hooked up. But again, to get the tools hooked up, you need the people connected too.
So, and maybe you just answered my next question, but is there, in your experience, have you seen more challenges integrating those two when the programs are separated, or is it more of a technology issue than a people issue?
Um, if you, I'll kind of caveat a little bit. If you have the right person on your optimization team that has like some pretty fantastic analytics chops, I think you can pull it off, right? But that's just on the testing part of it. That's just to get what you need out of testing. There's still that piece of, to your point, Jason, like how do you communicate what tests are live? Because some companies are running 10, 20, 30 tests at a time. I mean, you hear these crazy numbers at Google and Amazon. You're like, I don't even want to know, they're, they're running thousands of tests, right? But even one or two tests can have an impact on the numbers. So it is a tool thing, but you still need the people talking on a continual basis because stuff just happens. We get busy, and oh, I forgot to tell you about this test, and it's real easy to set up a workspace in an analytics tool to say here are all the actively running tests, and then share it with someone in analytics and give them access to that tool. And be like, okay, just so you know, I've set up this workspace, and I'm just going to keep it updated. And these are going to be all the tests we have running on the site. If you ever need to go in there, you can see what tests are running on what pages and all that. So yeah, it's still both for sure, people and tool.
What from a tooling perspective, um, what risks, or maybe even we focused a lot on risk, but maybe talk more about what you've seen that companies that have these tightly integrated and working together, what they're able to do that companies that don't aren't.
Yeah, good question. And I'm actually working on something right now, and I spent some, an hour or two this morning on it as well. And there's a company I'm working with. They have an A/B test live on the site right now. Again, I always keep in mind, and I say this a lot, but a lot of time and effort was put into getting this test running on the site. So I keep that in mind because we really want to make sure that we're getting the biggest benefit out of the test, and that doesn't mean it's a test winner. It might not be, but what I'm doing now is, and it stemmed from a great business question, the business side from the product owner, is all right, we got this test on our page, and I don't want to know how all visits to the page are performing. In other words, Jason, you hit the page, Jim, you're into the test, I'm in the test. I don't care about like all of those visits. I want to know a specific subset of people and how they performed in the site. Now, some of that can be done in targeting up front in the test, but only to a certain extent. So when analytics is tightly integrated with optimization with your testing tool, I can go in there and I can really do some cool things in analytics as far as creating these audiences to really drill down and say like, no, I don't want every visitor. I want every visitor who is registered, and then I want every visitor who has not done this yet, and I want to know the impact of the test on that specific subset. And it's getting really cool right now. Like I'm having fun with the data, and we're going back and forth. The client and I are going back and forth a lot. We're learning a lot about this certain subset, and without the analytics integration with the tool, it couldn't be done because this all stemmed from the client saying, "Hey, like I'm in the testing tool, and this is the issue I'm having." So
Yeah.
that's when I'm like, oh yeah, we got to look broader. We got to look at the analytics integration here.
In those companies that you've worked with that have had really well integrated programs, is there any commonality as far as which department they sit in, or have you seen it kind of randomly distributed across multiple departments?
I'd say it's pretty random. Obviously you see a lot to your point earlier about the sales. There's a lot in the marketing, right? But there's also I see a lot in analytics too, on the analytics team. Like we're working with another client where optimization is completely rolled up into the analytics team itself, and the benefit from there is just huge because on these weekly phone calls, it's analytics and optimization together, so everyone's like on the same page all the time. And you'll be talking about a test. Hey, we're thinking about this test, and we have this test brief, and the optimization person on the analytics team put it together. But then the analyst is on the call too. And be, hey, did you think of this? Right? What about exit rates? Did we look at that? That's super important.
In teams that have analytics and optimization combined, um, within that team, is there any kind of separation, or is it we're all kind of wearing multiple hats? So let's take the optimization component. If I'm an analyst, if I'm an architect, am I dedicated to the optimization program, even though we all roll up to analytics, or am I spread out and doing multiple things, and optimization is just one part of my role?
Yeah, so I mean, I've definitely seen both. When I was working at a large retailer a bunch of years ago, we had a dedicated analyst to the optimization team. We also had a dedicated developer. We also had a dedicated content person, design. So it was like, I mean, this team was cooking. It
High
was
functioning team
one,
sounds like.
yeah, high functioning. But you're not always going to have that. You're not going to have the dedication and the advocacy from above that needs to drive a best in class program like that. So you may have an analyst on the team that's also doing analysis for other projects, right? And that's okay. I think as long as the integration's there, you may have an analyst doing the optimization tool too. They may be doing both. So you may get just a highly talented person who can run the optimization as well as like dig into the analytics tool. So definitely see both.
Okay. We talked a lot about the importance of having these programs together from a results analysis perspective, but what about the other side, the kind of top of the funnel from
Yeah.
a ideation roadmap catalog testing catalog perspective? have you noticed a difference between the type and quality of test ideation from teams that are combined versus teams that are separate?
Yeah, I'd say a huge difference in quality, but also in quantity. Um, so you're getting more test ideas that are higher quality. And especially if you have someone is in the analytics tool or on the analytics team that really understands the site and really understands what the business is trying to do, and really can quickly look at the data and see like, oh, here's an issue right here. I just looked at checkout step 3, and wow, like look what the data is telling us right here. And they could probably think of 3 or 4 test ideas just to try to drive that one metric up. So you're getting more test ideas, but you're getting higher quality test ideas because they're based upon data, right? Not you hear the term hippo, right? Highest individual, highest paid person in the organization, or something like that. And their opinion matters the most because of the highest paid person, right? But a lot of those test ideas are based upon opinion and not on the data, right? And so if we really want to drive the data, we like this page, our category page for, let's say, t-shirts has a really high conversion rate, but also like a really high exit rate. And so, we got a high converting page, which a lot of people are leaving. So how do we keep some of those people staying on the page? And the only way you can get that data is through analytics, like, yeah, through that integration.
One scenario that I saw was a deliberate design to keep optimization and analytics separated, and I think the justification they use for it is that these two programs need a bit of a check and a balance in place. And while the optimization team very much included the analytics team, they were seen more of a support role to optimization, where it's like, we don't want you involved from an insights or a strategy perspective. We just need you to give us the data, make sure, and then we'll deal with it. And again, the whole justification was, we need checks and balances here. I'm interested if you've heard that as a justification for having it separated, and is there any real value to having it set up like that?
I can't off the top of my head see the value in setting it up like that. Um, if the strategy and insights team on the front end, if they're already data driven, then I think it might be okay. Like if they're already individuals who really understand the data well, and maybe they have access to analytics tool and they're used to doing it themselves. That could be an example where it might be okay, and they just go to the analytics team. Hey, I need some, I need some a little additional pool here, or we need to do a data warehouse pool or something like that. But off the top of my head, it wouldn't make much sense because you're potentially losing a lot of value on the front end.
Yeah, and it's just one data point, but I do remember one company where the optimization team was very, very, involved in the data, so much so that they actually looked down on the analytics team, where I sat in on several discussions where they're trying to be kind of this check and balance and real look into the data, and the optimization team several times kind of said, all right, kids, sit down. You don't know about Bayesian theory and advanced statistics, and it's like, okay, this doesn't feel healthy.
Yeah, and the last couple of times we've talked about starting an optimization program. You may learn really quickly that, hey, we've been running this optimization program for 6 months, 12 months. We have an ideation problem where we don't have a lot of ideas coming through. So you may learn organically that, oh, we need the analytics team in here. We need that integration, not only from a tool perspective but also from a people and process perspective. So from an organization that's just starting up in analytics, I mean, in optimization, they may learn that they need analytics. They may not feel that way in the beginning and be like, oh no, we can get this done in this way, and we'll reach out to you if needed. But I think what they'll learn pretty quickly is, they're losing a lot of value there.
Yeah, and let's talk about the flip side of that scenario, because I've definitely seen it as well, where the optimization team sits outside of analytics and they use the statistics in the optimization program to support a hypothesis that they like, and when the results don't end up what like they like, then the stats aren't really that important. We don't need to have that statistical rigor. So again, like that to me feels like a risk. How do we strike a balance of having some statistical rigor to what we do, but also, making sure that we're not being so geeky in the data that we're losing sight of the bigger strategy that we're trying to accomplish?
Well, I mean, I'll say this: there's been an instance in the past where the testing tool was not necessarily providing accurate data from a stat standpoint. So, the benefit of having your analytics team is like I could quickly do an offline calculation using Excel to validate whether what I'm seeing in my testing tool is accurate or not. So, when that's the case, if I'm just looking at significance in my test and I'm not really thinking through like, is this the right audience for this, significance that I'm looking at? Like you can really, yeah, you can get into some scary water there for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if I want to touch that one, but props to optimization platforms that provide some transparency into the calculations that they do, because yeah,
Yeah,
I mean we
yeah,
are getting into some fairly complex math. And there are platforms that are, and I understand it. Look, we have to strike a balance, because especially if we're trying to sell into, a marketing organization or a UX team, it's not a dumb it down approach, but if I'm gonna give you all this like statistical measure, I can see it being completely overwhelming. If I'm a marketer and you're like throwing confidence intervals and statistical power at me, it's like, whoa, like I just want to change this button color. So
yeah,
there has to be a balance there, but also there has to be some transparency and truth, because we're okay, we're not making drugs to treat viruses or something like
sure.
that, but for a lot of these businesses we work with, we're changing things that could very easily and very quickly make millions of dollars of impact, which is,
Yeah.
not yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, one of the things I love about working with 33 Sticks is like we are interested in helping our clients do better and succeed, and like I you know you see the WYSIWYGs, the user interface for like a testing tool, and oh, I'll quickly look at all 10 tests we're running. I'm just gonna look for the test that has a blue ribbon that says, "Hey, this test is a winner," right? And just pick it, and then just disregard everything else. So, from the standpoint of that, like, there has to be some rigor behind it. There has to be some understanding of what does it mean to have that blue ribbon on a test, name. What does it mean that the test is a winner? Like again, what audience are we looking at? What's the confidence rate? What's the confidence interval? We got to look at all that stuff,
Yeah.
um, because we do have the ability through optimization to help people have a very big impact on their company and on the business goals and on the outcomes. And sometimes that's really what it's all about, is just helping people have a bigger impact.
Yeah.
But that impact has to be, in my opinion, it has to be sound. There
Yes.
has to be some rigor behind the numbers, and I think when you're integrated with the analytics program and people, I think you'll have a better chance of making sure that that's like done. That's in place.
So let me introduce the scenario so I can play the Jim Driscoll role of devil's advocate here, and argue for maybe reasons why they should be separated. And it's a
And you
very
just took my questions. You literally did. I have them written down. So go ahead.
wait. I haven't even asked it yet.
I know exactly where you're going.
Are you sure? Okay. Um, and maybe this is a niche case, but I've definitely seen it where optimization programs are graded and rewarded on the success of their tests. And so is there some truth to having these programs separated, where you have a independent measurer that can hold the team accountable, that's not being graded on the. By the way, I hate that as a success metric for optimization programs. I think that's very unhealthy, but it exists. So, is there a case where having an independent auditor is actually a good thing in those scenarios?
Yeah, I think there is, and one of them is just estimating the impact of the tests, right? So, um, yeah, I'm with you on that. Like chasing velocity is not always the best approach, but let's say I have 5 test winners in a year. I think if you work with your analytics team to say, hey, let's estimate the annual impact here, that's a great checks and balances there because then you have an individual or a group that's not necessarily involved in the start to finish process of the test, but they can take these test results and say, all right, based upon these 5 tests, we estimate an annual impact of $10.5 million for the year based upon these test winners. That might be a great situation where you have a little bit of checks and balances there, because I could see it being easy to say, oh, we had just roughing the number. Oh, we had $20 million of revenue impact last year. Did
Right.
you really?
Yeah.
Like, I don't remember. I don't remember those numbers. So
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a great example of having them
Also,
separate.
it's interesting that your high performance benchmark set by your manager was $20 million of impact. It's interesting how you hit that right on the nose. All right, Jim,
Yeah.
go ahead with your questions.
Yeah, I mean, wasn't a specific scenario, but yeah, I wanted to kind of get into playing devil's advocate a bit because, in the course of this conversation, we've talked about the benefits and the positive outcomes that happen when you have these two teams integrated, and the risks of not having them integrated. Um, so like the first thing I could think of is, and Jason, you did start to answer this, is like what are some of the pitfalls when integrating these two teams? We talked about the one here where basically the analytics team becomes a rubber stamp for the optimization team. Can you think of other risks that or pitfalls an organization can run into and should be aware of when making sure these teams are tightly integrated?
Yeah, and it goes back to Jason's point earlier about not necessarily a dedicated resource, but if you're going to have these programs integrated, um, a pitfall would be, all right, we're really rock and roll. We got an optimization program humming. We just did a site redesign, and we need our analysts over here for the next 2 months, right? Um, so having some sort of agreement up front that, you know, again, you're not always going to get a full-time dedicated analyst on the team, but maybe, hey, we need 25-30% of your time consistently, right? Because you need, for an optimization program to fully run and cook, you need to continually show results. And I don't mean results like winners and driving revenue and conversion. I mean results like, here's what we're learning, right? Here's what the data is telling us from these tests. And if you lose your analyst, that resource for 2 months, or a month, even a couple of weeks, that's going to show on your output, and that's going to show with these conversations you're having with your advocates who are at the senior level. And you don't want to kill that momentum. You need that to keep going and going. So off the top of my head, Jen, that's one pitfall I could think of for sure.
Yep. And then like as we talked about like tightly integrating them, could you take it a step or two too far where these teams are, and I'm gonna, if it doesn't exist, I'm gonna reinvent the word. Can you over integrate them where one starts to suffer or one program cannibalizes the other?
That's a good question. There's got to be a use case for it, right? So are you saying? So you're saying I integrate them fully. I integrate my analytics and optimization program, and then am I like taking away
Where one takes away from the
resources
other.
from yeah,
Yeah, where
yeah,
they begin to take away from each other instead of complementing and enhancing each other.
yeah. I mean, I guess that's more a resourcing question. So if I'm understanding what you're saying, Jim, so if I'm taking a resource and I'm bringing in the optimization team, I'm losing that resource from my analytics team. Or we make an agreement to split time 50-50, but then they're spending too much time with optimization and not as much time with
Mm-hmm.
their analytics team. So they could suffer from the standpoint of meeting their metrics on their analytics team. Yeah, I could see that happening. I will say this: optimization teams are fun to work with. Like they really are. They seem to have a good time. So you may get an analyst that says, "Yeah, let's stay over here for a little bit longer." That's really the only thing I can think of there.
What makes optimization teams so fun to work with?
I don't know. It's just it's you always hear this, but there people get involved in optimization, whether they're coming from design or analytics, but they're like, this is cool. Like I didn't know we could change the site like this and see what the impact is. And I think really it's the standpoint that you can have a big impact. You have the potential to have a really big impact on the broader organization, and it's fun because you get involved in design content, like the psychology of purchasing, and there's all these different subject matters that come into play in optimization. So I think it's super interesting, and I think a lot of times it's just a lot of times the people involved in them, they just seem to be enjoying it a little bit more. Hey, let's make a guess on which test is going to win. Let's have some fun. It sets it up for it.
It makes me wonder if we could use that recipe or special sauce that is in optimization. And sure, I think you have the. Sorry, I'm going way off track with my last question here. You have the benefit of being able to see direct behavior to consumer impact and consumer behavior. But I'm wondering if you could take that kind of recipe and apply it to the analytics team, because I think the opposite is also true. Analytics teams often feel so defeated because they don't see the impact that they're having, even though they could be. So I'm wondering if there's like combining these teams and finding some way to take that feel good impact that the optimization team has and apply it to the analytics team, because a lot of them are
That
hurting.
yeah, that's fantastic. And as you were talking, I was thinking through some of the teams I work with or have worked with. When there's a full time analyst in there, they do see the impact right away of what they're doing. I just pulled all this data, and I'm running the results, and this test. Let's say this test was a winner, and we just drove an increase of $500,000 of revenue. You know, and oh, I made this page better. I changed this page, and now look, they pushed the change to production. Oh, they're having a conversation with their kids at home, like, hey, look, that's the page I was involved in that test, and now we made the site better. It's like little things like that. So yeah, great point about some benefits of integration there.
All right, Jim, I made it through my list of questions.
Those are tough questions at the end.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm off the hot seat now.
we wanted to ease you in and then like hit you at the very end with some real.
It worked.
Yeah. No, I think we hit all of the important things. We hit the questions I had as well. And again, knowing we were kind of coming in with a bit of a bias on our perspective is you shouldn't separate these two teams, but did want to make sure we covered like that. It's also not going to solve all of your problems by integrating them.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, a really fun conversation. And I like toward the end there, like the idea of like gamifying stuff. And you definitely see that a bit more with optimization teams than others, like the gamification of it. So, so thanks for joining us again. We have one more episode with you next week. And to give a quick preview of that, we want to talk about how do you build a proper test hypothesis? So really getting into the weeds.
That was gonna be fun.
Because again, like you've touched on it a couple times in these earlier episodes where, Jason, you touched on it today with the entry into marketing and just like the sales coming in and saying, oh, here's our WYSIWYG editor, and you want to change that button from red to blue, or change the text from this to that. Like it's easy to jump right into it, but like the more complicated tests, the tests that could really drive value, how do you really plan for them out? And a key component of that being the hypothesis.
Yeah, that's a good one, Jim. I can bring in some ideas of what not to do there as well.
Yeah, perfect. So let's go ahead and wrap up there for this week. We'll continue this theme again next week, and we'll talk to everyone later.
All right. Enjoy the day.
See ya.
See ya.
Thanks. Bye.